So this is a response to an email that someone wrote with excellent questions for which I have no good conclusive answers. But I have some suggestions, so I'll share those. Okay? And I think that perhaps what he's saying is shared by a number of people. So he starts at, "Dear beautiful sisters." That's a nice way to start. Okay, so he says, "I ask this in all seriousness and without sarcasm or irony. How can we help this president? A wounded, bullied boy learned how to hate. Somehow he became president. My Catholic grandmother would urge prayers. She would rally her Italian sisters into a room to say a novena. She would use oil and incense and probably put a curse on him. Or she would beg the saints and angels to intervene. That's better. Then she would go back to her soap operas and sleep well at night. Of course, the Buddhist path requires more diligence." So here are his questions. How can we cope with the intensifying hatred roiling throughout the country? As the next election looms, he continues to bait, to seethe, to foam at the mouth with blatant hatred. Each day or week, a new reality hate show is on display. He appears addicted to hatred, almost rabid with unrestrained power, and we are at the risk of being bitten and getting sick. Yes, the Dharma is a great vaccination to the rabid poison, but I am just a beginner, and sometimes the medicine wears off, and I too foam at the mouth. I dislike the raw emotion I feel when I see innocents harmed or threatened. I dislike feeling overcome with emotion, falling into speechlessness or reverting to wrong speech. Certainly understandable, isn't it? Okay, maybe I'll just read the whole thing and then share some reflections because it all kind of ties together. I think he enjoys this. He gets exactly what he wants: more divisiveness, more attention, and more raw emotion emanating from all. Even the mainstream media oozes raw emotion. This raw emotion is like a malignant tumor that metastasizes throughout the country. And I would say it is what has made our civic dialogue so impolite, so full of contempt, so that people have a difficult time talking to each other now. Yeah. How can we help him? How can we help his supporters? How can we avoid the dangerous raw emotion? How can we prevent ethnic cleansing? Now, some people may say he's going too far, being afraid of ethnic cleansing. I don't think he's going too far. I see signs of things happening here, being said here, that was very much like what was said and what was done in the Weimar Republic in Germany before the Second World War. Today I listened to a radio broadcast. The interview invited his supporters to give their opinions about the president's latest comments, telling American-born congresswomen of various ethnicities to go back to your country. I listened closely, trying with every ounce of mindfulness to be empathic, to find the Buddha inside all of them, and to try to hear something sensible. And I have to say it was difficult. I heard human voices with no humanity, empathy and reason devoid. I have found myself at times trying to persuade his supporters to consider evidence, data, and proven facts. It always fails. I have then tried to listen with total openness to their views. This too fails. I fail. I have also engaged in raw emotional debates. This always fails. Being passive is not an option. Being active is confusing. Avoiding seems wrong. Watching is excruciating. Yeah, he's very articulate, and I think this is exactly how a lot of people that we know feel and fear. Okay, so like I said, I don't have any magic pill to change this. A few ideas, okay? So the force of prayer, I think, is important. Yeah. So sometimes what I pray is that maybe there is a Buddha or a Bodhisattva somewhere in this vast universe who has a karmic connection with the president and with Mitch and with several of the other guys in power, such that they can manifest in ways that might make him or them think. And although this sounds really far-fetched and improbable, I can't help but think of Ashoka, the great Buddhist king Ashoka in India. Before he became a Buddhist, he was a rabid warrior, slaughtered thousands of people and gloated over it, and one day looked at the field of dead bodies of the soldiers that had been killed by his army, and all of a sudden was overcome with incredible regret and changed his ways, and then started propagating the Dharma, and that's why we have these Ashokan edicts carved on pillars, with the lion's head on the top, which is, one of the big symbols in India. So something changed Ashoka, So maybe some Buddha or Bodhisattva, who made incredible prayers in a previous life, can help. But maybe we also need to make prayers for in a future life, when we become Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, to have connection to people like this who torment the world and spread hatred. Maybe we can't do it now with this situation because we don't have that ability, but let's at least set an intention when we have the ability to be able to connect to people like this and help them change their ways, help them see the harmfulness of their actions. So that's something we can do now, at least to prepare for the future, rather than throwing up our arms, saying it's useless, sticking our head in the ground, okay? Other ideas. I think we need to learn to talk to each other. But as he said, a lot of the communication is quite difficult because we try to talk in our usual ways to convince somebody of another way of seeing things. I have come to the conclusion, in spite of practicing the Dharma, which is based on reason, that people first figure out what they believe according to their emotions. Then they find reasons to back up what they believe. And so in thinking about Trump, what he has a way of connecting to certain people, not everybody, but certain people, whereby he makes them feel like he understands their fears and their needs and their insecurities. Yeah. So he has some way of communicating that where people feel understood and they feel that he can protect them. So that is a gut reaction inside of them. Reasoning is not going to affect that. Okay? So I think the best way is if we can find some way to connect with those same people on a gut level, whereby we understand their fears and insecurities. And then instead of proposing the path of hatred as an antidote to it, to propose another path, a path of sharing, a path of empathy, to propose another way of dealing with what these people are experiencing. Yeah, because telling them they're wrong isn't going to work. Yeah. I mean, we know that ourselves. If people tell us we're wrong, we don't listen to them. Okay. So it has to be some kind of gut connection where we can really listen from our hearts. And whether we agree or don't agree is irrelevant. We have to be able to show that we understand and have some empathy. Yeah. And establish some basis of trust. On that basis of trust, then to propose some other ways of remedying the things that they're afraid of, the things that they're concerned about. Yeah. So I think it has to be done on that level. Calling people names, does not work. And as he saw, us becoming rabid with anger and hatred only pollutes our own mind and racks up the degree of the conflict. Yeah. So of course, we have to find some way of keeping our own mind calm. That's the first thing to do. Yeah. And I know what helps me do that is, first of all, thinking of the kind of karma that people create when they express this kind of hatred and bias and bigotry. Yeah. And it's, when you study the teachings, it's just very clear. When you suffer from arrogance like this, it creates the cause to be born in a very low position in a next life, to be an oppressed person in your next life. Yeah. When you spew hatred, it creates the cause to be born in the hell realm, where you yourself are filled with fear of others' hateful actions. Yeah. So when I think, here are people in power who think that they have such a wonderful life and delight in their power, but they're using it to create the cause for their own hellish rebirths for a long time to come, because the scope of the harm they're doing is quite vast. Yeah, but the harm comes back on them. And I can't wish any other sentient being harm. You know, I have to admit, sometimes I wonder, what if Trump had a heart attack and died? I have to admit that. Okay, I get that. I banish that thought as soon as I can because I don't want to wish ill to any living being. And also because I know that doesn't solve anything. Yeah, a Pence presidency is not going to be any better. And the hatred that has been incited so far isn't going to vanish. So I don't want to wish harm to anybody. Yeah. But when I think of the karmic repercussions of the actions of those people in power, I can't hate those people. I have to have compassion for them because they're totally blind to how karma and its effects function. They're totally blind to the causes they're creating for their own experience. So there's no way really to hate them or to wish them harm. Really, compassion is the only thing. Yeah. What else can we do? We need to speak up. Yeah. We can speak up without being angry. Okay. We look at the example of His Holiness, and he speaks up about the situation of Tibet, but he's not angry about it. Yeah. And he, in fact, tells the Tibetans not to hate the communist Chinese people because it's just a thing of the government that's doing this. So, for us not to hate anybody, not to call them names, yeah, but to speak up about the policies, to speak up about the attitudes, okay, not to criticize individuals, yeah, because for the people who see him as their savior, criticizing him is only going to make them stronger in their grasping, yeah. But if we can talk instead about policies, about attitudes, about what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world filled with hatred? Do you want to live in a world filled with peace? I'm sure those people would say, I want to live in a peaceful world. I don't think any of his supporters would say, I want to live in a world full of hate. Yeah. So we can, come together. Yes, all of us want to live in a peaceful world. How can we do that? Yeah. Do we want to live in a world where there is fear? No, none of us want to live there, Do we want to live in a world where people are oppressed and exploited? No, nobody wants to live in a world like that. Yeah. So if we can come together on those kinds of things, but then not say to those people, oh, you don't want to live in a world where people are fearful and exploited. Look what you're doing to the immigrants at the border. No, that is not going to help. It's like, yeah, you and we're alike. None of us want to live in a world where there's a lot of oppression. Nobody likes that, okay? So how can we deal with problems in our country so that we can not oppress others and not be oppressed ourselves? Let's get creative about some ideas. Okay, so some way of connecting with people about the principles, about the type of world we all want to live in, and realize that we can come together on that. The difference is in how we want to get there. Okay, but in the values, I think we can find some agreement. And if we can help people see that agreement, it can alter the quality of the discourse in the country. Okay? So let's stay away from, arguing with people about policies. Yeah. Or we can argue about policies with people who, are kind of see things the way we do already. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, we argue there's, within the Democratic Party, there's the liberals and the progressives. And so, yeah, we discuss different policies there. But with Trump supporters, let's talk more about values, yeah, and ethical norms and things like that that we can all agree on and develop some way of communicating, because then at least there will be some trust. And when, we look at the other side, instead of seeing deplorables, which I think is horrible to call people, we see human beings who want to be happy and not suffer. And then they too can look at the other side and see human beings who want to be happy and not suffer. Yeah. And that can at least create some connection and maybe settle down the hatred and the contempt that prevent us from being civil to each other. And the taking and giving meditation, do that one.
I wonder if now is the time to start appealing to people's religious values. So trying to get a conversation started with them about, are you spiritual? Do you follow a certain faith? And, all religious scriptures talk about non-hatred, non-violence, love, compassion.
Exactly.
And really work that back into the dialogue because it seems to be completely absent. There's no moral content anymore.
Yeah, and on the spiritual values that are common in all religions and common with people who are non-believers in too.